Hey, it's Daz, and I want to talk about a interesting Netflix show that I watched called Midnight Mass. Some of you have probably already seen it because it aired in 2021. It's a limited series with only 7 episodes. There are spoiler alerts here, so if you want to see it and you haven't watched it yet, I would recommend coming back to this video because I'm going to give a brief synopsis of everything that happened from episode 1 to 7. There are themes of fanaticism, fallen angels, false prophets, supernatural beings such as vampires, drinking the Koolaid, cults, dogma, and unbelief. So the story is told more so in a third-person lens because we get a look in several people's lives. One of the primary characters is Monsignor Pruitt. He is an elderly priest on the small island called Crockett Island, or they call it the Crock Pot for its nickname, of only 127 people, which has seen a population decline. Monsignor Pruitt is away on a trip to Jerusalem when he gets separated from the group and he encounters a dust storm in the desert. He seeks refuge inside a cave where a grotesque creature attacks him with glowing eyes and starts to drink his blood. He is terrified, but the creature seems to take pity on him and gives it some of its blood to drink, making him immortal, and he sees himself as being saved by an angel and wants to share the good news with his congregation. But he knows that it's too soon to tell them that he is indeed himself because he's been restored to peak health. So he returns to the island during the night of a storm, and during that night, Riley, who is another primary character, he had just returned to the island after serving time in jail. He had left and went on to live in the city, and unfortunately he fell into addiction and drinking, and he ended up killing a girl in a drunk driving incident. And every night he's haunted by visions of that girl who he killed. So when he returns to the island, he, who was once a loyal member of the Catholic Church, is now an atheist, and there's not much convincing. Yet his family wants him to go to the church. They make it one of the requirements they have of him staying. So he does attend the church. And so he notices that night of the storm what he believes to be Monsignor Pruitt outside walking, but there's no way with how violent the storm is and how fast he's moving, and he's supposed to be away in Jerusalem. The next morning, they discover a bunch of dead cats who seemingly had their blood drained from them, and they're wondering who could have done this during the night of the storm, or what kind of animal could have done it. There is also a sheriff who's a primary character and his son who live on the island who are Muslim, and that makes a huge deal to the local people since most of them are primarily Catholic or Christian. Beverly, or short for Bev, she's very judgmental, very legalistic. She does not like the sheriff for this reason and constantly has beef with him every time they encounter each other in any little town meeting. And she's also kind of like the personal assistant to Monsignor Pruitt, so when he returns, she's surprised to see him. It's not really revealed if she knew right away that that was him, but it seems like she does because she probably knew when he was younger and knows that's what he looked like when he was younger. But he introduces himself as Paul, and he starts to have miracles happen in the church, such as Lisa, one of the teens in the community who was in a wheelchair. She suddenly is able to walk after taking communion. The doctor whose mother has had dementia and has aged suddenly starts aging in reverse. And we come to find out that the angel, as they call this vampire figure, who's like the head vampire, original vampire, is giving his blood to Monsignor Pruitt to give to the people. So every time they're taking communion, they're actually drinking this vampiric blood, which is in their bodies. And so Erin Green, one of the women in the community who had also returned not too long, who was pregnant after running away from her abusive husband, she ends up losing her baby. It's supposedly a miscarriage, but it's almost as if it never was in her stomach to begin with, and they're wondering what is going on. So after Riley is attacked by the angel, when he goes back to check on Monsignor Pruitt because he realizes that he lied about the town drunk that he had attacked, to drink his blood because he couldn't contain his appetite for blood, he's attacked by the angel and he is transformed. But rather than choosing to remain a vampire and harm anyone, he warns Aaron and he combusts into flames that next morning. And she goes back to try to tell his family, but his family won't believe her. And then she tells a town doctor who's been investigating these strange occurrences and realizes that the blood that she keeps taking from her mother is bursting into flames. So they go attend the Easter Mass that everyone is so ecstatic for because there's this hysteria around miracles and everyone's excited. And Monsignor Pruitt is unable to have Mass in the sunlight like he originally could. And he reveals himself to actually be Monsignor Pruitt instead of Paul. And he also reveals the angel or vampire. And everyone is terrified, but at the same time they drink this solution that causes them to die but be reborn, including the sheriff's son. And as they begin to transform, they attack those who haven't drank it, and only a few survivors make it out. And they go on a rampage, burning down the town, every building, and turning anyone. But the problem is they burn every ship, so they're not able to go to the mainland to spread the virus. And then the church that they were supposed to sleep in, that gets burned down. And basically they're left when sunrise, the whole town, except for 2 survivors who made it onto the boat, all turned to ash. So what is the point of this story? Well, we can look at it as another vampire story. We can also look at it as a way that people can become hysterical from the ideal of miracles or the idea of seeking the truth. And a lot of scripture is taken out of context in this storyline. People witness horrible things happening to one another in the town, yet they dismiss it because they're so tied to their ideal of salvation, their idea of the otherworldly. Even when they're terrified of this devilish creature, they still see it as an angel because, again, scripture is twisted to say that when angels appeared in the Bible, people were always afraid. And it never is explained to us that this angel is a vampire. It's more so because we know of vampiric lore that this is a vampire, but we're led to believe this is some kind of angel that has created chaos. And we know, if you look into the book of Enoch, that the watchers who came down during Noah's time actually taught drinking blood and cannibalism. So it's not too far off that the original vampires most likely have ties to fallen angels or Nephilim, which were the descendants of the watchers and human women during that time. What's crazy about this show is that, as supernatural and otherworldly as it is, it's something that we could very well see happening, because if you think about Jonestown and how you had so many people who were tricked by Jim Jones and who ended up drinking the Kool-Aid. Some say that he actually had worked for the government, that these people were actually experiments, and that some of the members of his cult actually were members of the mental institution, like workers. So they knew how to manage some of the cult members, or they were patients. It makes a lot of sense. But in a world where people are desperate, where we have things like hyperinflation, where we have people losing hope because of all of the depressing news, how many people would go to great lengths, including being reborn, to have that miracle, to have hope again? And of course, they use the guise of Christianity and joining the army of God, which is total blasphemy, when it was something so dark and devilish. I do think Midnight Mass is symbolic of the human desperation for the otherworldly. I think that's why we see a boom in witch talk and paranormal interest, is because of this inner desire that people have, that some people, rather than seeking God, they seek it out in other means. I'd like to know what your thoughts are on Midnight Mass if you've seen it. If you have not, and you decided to watch this despite not seeing it, I'd like to know your thoughts on the themes discussed here. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Take care. God bless. Until next time.